Hello! Who is ready for a new season of the Booker Prize? And who is ready to start speculating about what is going to be on this year's Booker Prize long list? Well, people have already been speculating, so I'm just here to add my 2 cents to the mix. Well, actually, my 13 cents to the mix, my 13 pennies, because I have chosen and limited myself. I feel like I've been very self-restrained and limited myself to picking only 13 books that I am predicting will be on this year's long list. But I've also controversially chosen one book which I hope will not be longlisted for the award this year. It's one that I'm not interested in, that I don't want to read, but I'm slightly worried that it probably will be on this year's long list. So I will mention that as well. But first, I will talk about these 13 books, which are a mixture of some books that I have read and loved, and I would love to see them being honored on the Booker Prize long list. But then there are some which I'm also really keen to read, which I've heard great things about. And so mostly these books are a mixture of these things, but also there's a bit of savviness thrown in of that I think some of these books are very likely to make this year's list. So I will get into talking about them, and we will see on July 30th of what is on the official long list for this year. So to qualify for this year's prize, books need to have been published in the UK or Ireland between October 1st, 2023 and September 30th, 2024. That is the publication window in which books need to have come out in order to be eligible. So I think all of the books that I've chosen meet those qualifications, and but I would love to hear about what your predictions are, what you're hoping and expecting to see on this year's long list. Please let me know about that in the comments below. Now, first off, there is a novel which is one of my favorite of the year, of Hisham Matar's My Friends. And I've been speculating ever since I first read it that this will not only be listed for this year's prize, but will actually win it. So we will see how good my crystal ball is in actually predicting this and going forward, because I think it is an extraordinary masterpiece, following the story of a young man named Khalid, who moves from Libya to the United Kingdom to study, and then gets involved in a tragic event, which means that he is both cut off from his homeland and his family, and lives a kind of precarious and limbo existence in London for many years going forward, and about his close connection with 2 other contemporary young men who are also from Libya and who have a complicated relationship with their home country, and it follows them over a period of time and through their lives, and it is so emotionally brilliant how it does this. I've talked about this book so much, how it explores friendship and family and their emotional connections with each other, but also one's involvement in politics, how sometimes we are swept into the politics of our country, whether we want to be or not, but it is also so much a quiet novel, contemplative novel, looking at our relationship to art and to books and to the spirit of intellect and learning and loving life, while being caught up in the greater events of history. And it is so tremendous that I will be sorely disappointed if this isn't longlisted. Another novel which is one of my favorites of the year, and which has been much talked about and much celebrated already, so start giving it awards. James by Percival Everett. This brilliant reimagining and telling the story of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn from the point of view of the character of Jim, and the tone of this book, which is kind of a blend of like history and satire, but also just a really emotional emotional journey following Jim as he travels down the river with Huck Finn and his very complicated relationship with him and his longing for his family that he's needed to leave behind, and his desire to reconnect with him and to establish a sense of independence and to start reading and writing his love and passion for literature. And Percival Everett is just such a brilliant writer that is finally getting the recognition he deserves. He was previously shortlisted for his novel The Trees, which is just behind me here on the shelf, and this novel could be a winner. This Strange Eventful History by Claire Messud, this novel which is a really sweeping family and historical epic following 3 generations of characters as they move from wartime, from World War II, to being scattered throughout the world, and the various different connections and disconnections with one another, the way that they try to forge new paths for themselves, but find themselves swept into the history which is happening around them. And so I initially speculated about and read this novel because it was endorsed by Yi Yun Lee on the very cover of the book, who is one of the judges of this year's Booker Prize, and usually that's a very good sign that this book and any book that happens to will probably be longlisted for the award. But Yi Yun Lee also endorses lots of people's books, so you never know. It might make it and it might not. But I thought this was a brilliant story, and I got so emotionally swept up into it. It's a fantastic journey that is also really poignant in what it says about the past and family life and our complicated relationships with those things. Martyr! Exclamation point by Kaveh Akbar, a debut novel which has been getting a lot of praise. It's been appearing on a lot of best books of the year lists so far in America, and I think deservedly so. It is such an engaging and clever and fun novel that is also really moving and says something much bigger about who we are and our relationship to family and the country that we live in. So it follows a young Iranian American man who is in somewhere in between his late 20s and early 30s, in that awkward period of young adulthood and full adulthood when he needs to start making decisions about his life. But he's also very haunted by the past and the loss of his parents, who died for very different reasons, but whose deaths felt somewhat trivial, that they were just a coincidence and didn't have any deeper meaning. And he wants his life and possibly his death to have much more meaning. So it's about his quest for discovering that, his a connection he forms with an artist who is dying, and their very profound connection, and how it looks at modern life, and it's so imaginative how it does this with imagined conversations between historical figures and figures from popular culture, that this story is so playful and innovative and fun, while also being really meaningful. And there are always some debuts on the long list for the Booker. At least I think there are. But I think this is one that would be a really worthy addition. Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. I know this is a bit of an outside choice, but I keep being a champion for one of my favorite authors of all time, Joyce Carol Oates, who's so tremendous in her writing, and she is also very pally with Yi Yun Lee, so you never know, this may appear on the long list. And this story is so impactful and extraordinary in how it recreates this lunatic asylum in the 1800s in America, and a very ambitious doctor who sets about conducting a number of very gruesome experiments on female patients and indentured servants in order to make a name for himself and establish establish himself in the medical profession and to prove himself to his daddy. It's a really terrifying and gripping adventure and a very atmospheric and Gothic story, but also it says something much more about how misogyny has been a part of the medical profession ever since its founding and its creation, but she looks at this history in a very complex way about how these medical developments did lead to a progression in science and in treatment for patients, but usually at the expense of the most vulnerable members of our society. And it's so interesting where this story ends up. There's a lot of ambiguity about it. We just read it with my online book club, and we had a lot of debate and discussion about the story as the whole and especially the ending. Long Island by Colm Toibin. This novel, I know we don't like it when sequels appear on prize lists, but this book is so good and I think can be read on its own. You don't need to have read Brooklyn beforehand, although I would recommend it. I do think it does help, but this novel is so good. It's such a brilliantly crafted story, very dramatic from its very beginning, but also so meaningful and moving how the story plays out, following an Irish woman who has established herself in America but travels back to Ireland and contemplates the life she might have there in the future, or whether she should go back to the life that she has built for herself. And the way Toibin writes the gaps in the what is said and what is left unsaid says so much in itself, which is a very silly and trivial way of saying that I think this book is a very likely candidate. It's a very readable book, a very popular book, and I think there is usually a book on prize lists that is very accessible in this way, but also this is an author that is absolutely extraordinary, that is at the height of his powers, that has been listed in the past, so yes, very likely. Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. This is a novel from Australia following an Aboriginal family and their very complicated relationship with the society around them, following their individual journeys, but also how their world is threatened by environmental change and threatens to their language itself. And I have seen so much praise for Praiseworthy, and it's been snatching awards around the world. So it seems a very likely candidate and a very long, complex novel that does seem like it will really benefit from prize attention to get people to dedicate themselves to reading this very long and complex, but which I've been told is a very rewarding reading experience. The Lost Love Songs of Boysie Singh by Ingrid Persaud. This is the author's much anticipated second novel. I absolutely loved her first novel, Love After Love, and I've been so looking forward to reading this story, which is set in Trinidad and Tobago, following four women who are connected to a charismatic gangster, and following their separate stories and how their lives come together under this very difficult and threatening figure, and their story together. The way that Persaud writes about complicated human relationships and romantic relationships, I think is so powerful and extraordinary. And also look at the inside pages of this book, how vibrant it is. Caledonian Road by Andrew O'Hagan, and this is a novel set in London in May 2021, following a man who's an art historian and a celebrity pundit as he moves between many different layers of society and in his interactions and the dramatic events which unfold, this creates a state of the nation novel, as it has been dubbed in a number of reviews. And so it feels like the kind of story that captures our world today, in our modern world, in a way which prizes often give attention to. And I'm currently reading this with my online book club. It's a really involving and fun and interesting story. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to continue reading and discussing it with the members of the club. And but also, yeah, I think it is quite likely to get prize attention, as O'Hagan has been nominated in the past. Choice by Neel Mukherjee. This novel follows the strands of 3 different stories and how they touch upon one another. There is a publisher who has big issues with the publishing industry. There is an academic who exchanges one story for another, and there is an Indian family from a working class neighborhood who feels their lives affected by much larger changes and choices in the world. So it's looking at how our individual decisions have much bigger effects than we realize or expect over time. And I think this is a very kind of literary novel in the way that it is constructed and the statements that it is making. And Neel Mukherjee has been nominated for the Booker Prize in the past. He's praised on the cover by a shortlistee from last year of Paul Murray, but is also praised by Yan Li on the inside. So seems like a very likely candidate, and is a novel that I've just been meaning to read and been wanting to read. Real Americans by Rachel Kahn. This novel is following a Chinese American family and how the children of these immigrants aren't living up to their parents' expectations. So it's following their lives, but also looking at their parents' lives before they moved to America. And this novel has been getting so much praise. I read the author's previous novel, Goodbye Vitamin, which was so excellent and I thought really deserved prize attention. So I think it's a very likely candidate. And finally, there are a couple of novels which aren't published yet, but which I think are very likely candidates. And often on the list, there are some novels which haven't been published yet because the eligibility is till the end of September. And so I know this is very frustrating for a lot of readers, but also it's just part of the Booker rules. So the first book is Elif Shafak's a new novel, There Are Rivers in the Sky, which just makes me think of Sondheim and There Are Giants in the Sky. But anyway, the title just makes me think about that. This is said to be the story of a lost poem of 2 rivers and 3 tremendous lives. And so it follows a number of characters spanning a long period of history and in different cities and following the trajectory of their lives. And Shafak writes in such an emotional and powerful way, which has so much resonance for the world today in a way which is really beautiful as well. And she has been listed for the prize in the past, and I've seen nothing but very high praise for this book, advanced very high praise. And so, yeah, seems very likely. Oh, and it's going to be published here in the UK on August 8th. And also on September 5th, the novel Our London Lives by Christine Dwyer Hickey is going to be published. She is an Irish author, and this story is following 2 Irish characters who arrive in London in the late 1970s and who form a connection with each other, but then they separate, they come back together, and it's following their lives over a period of decades and the many different changes they go through, the secrets of their past and their history. And I read this author's previous novel, The Narrow Land, which I thought was so good, so powerful, an incredible story, and I've heard very great things about this book, and I'm so excited to read it. So that is my selection of the 13 books that I'm predicting will be on this year's Booker Prize long list. There are also many other authors that are very likely candidates. There's Chigozie Obioma, there is Colin Barrett, there is Justin Torres, whose novel Blackouts would be eligible since it was published here in the UK later last year. Sally Rooney has a new novel out. Pat Barker has a new novel out. And Rachel Cusk has a new novel out. Her new novel, Parade, is also eligible for this year's prize, and that is the book that I'm hoping will not be longlisted for this year's prize, because her previous novel, Second Place, was listed for the Booker Prize, and I really did not like that novel. I found it really uncomfortable experience, one that I didn't get a lot out of, and that I thought was a lot of style over substance. I'm sorry, but I think her new novel, Parade, is very likely to be on this year's long list, mainly because one of the judges of this year's prize is Justine Jordan, and when Rachel Cusk's previous novel appeared on the Booker long list, Rachel Cusk, Justine Jordan, wrote an article in which she summed up the Booker Prize season, and she said that she thought Rachel Cusk's novel was the standout book from the list. So it's obviously a very big fan of this author. So it is quite likely that that Parade will at least be on the long list for this year's Booker. And I'll be really torn whether to read it or not. I pretty much decided after Second Place that I wouldn't read any more of Rachel Cusk's fiction, just because it doesn't really work for me. I mean, I really thought Outline was really interesting and admirable in a lot of ways, and has been very influential. And I know she has a lot of fans, but is just not an author for me. But we will see on July 30th when the official Booker long list is announced. So let me know what you think of my choices, if you agree with them or disagree with them, if you're hoping Rachel Cusk will be on the long list or not, and we will see. It's all just part of the fun. I'm speculating about what is going to be listed for this year's prize. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things. I'm looking forward to reading these books that I've predicted, whether they're listed or not, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.